Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel, Immigration Canada. Canada Immigration 2026. Critical rule changes every applicant must know. Let's rewind to the very beginning and trace how Canada's immigration journey unfolded in 2025, because understanding that story is the key to predicting what's coming next in 2026. The Immigration Levels Plan, a strategic reset. In October 2024, Canada unveiled its 2025 to 2027 Immigration Levels Plan, signaling a deliberate shift toward balance. The government set a target of 395,000 new permanent residents and 673,650 temporary residents in 2025, including students and workers. These numbers marked a noticeable pullback from 2024's ambitious 500,000 PR target. The broader objective was equally clear: reduce temporary residents to roughly 5% of the total population by the end of 2026 and prioritize in-Canada applicants. By late 2025, authorities had finalized over 377,000 PR decisions, admitting approximately 343,400 new permanent residents, a strong finish under tighter controls. Express entry and provincial nominee highlights. Throughout 2025, express entry remained active and highly targeted. Hundreds of draws focused on skilled workers, French speakers, healthcare professionals, and priority occupations, keeping competition intense but strategic. Provincial nominee programs adapted quickly. Ontario issued about 12,500 invitations, while British Columbia faced a 50% cut in federal allocations, reducing nominations to 4,000. British Columbia concentrated heavily on healthcare, entrepreneurs, and essential roles, reserving limited spots for high-value candidates. Alberta gained momentum mid-year, receiving additional nominations that lifted its total to over 6,400 for 2025. Atlantic provinces filled their allocations early, with Nova Scotia and New Brunswick both reporting demand far beyond capacity. Across the board, provinces refined their streams to match real labor shortages, not broad intake goals. International students, fewer numbers, stricter rules. Canada continued attracting international students, but under firm limits. The 2025 study permit cap was set at 437,000, about 10% lower than the previous year. Proof of funds requirements rose sharply, and institutions were required to verify acceptance letters. Work permit rules tightened too. Spousal open work permits were largely restricted to graduate-level programs, dramatically reducing dependent entries. As expected, numbers dropped fast. By October 2025, student permit holders fell to 484,000, down from 625,000 the year before. New student entries declined by nearly 60% year-over-year, easing pressure on housing and services. Temporary foreign workers, slowing the flow. Canada still relied heavily on foreign workers, but growth slowed. By October 2025, there were about 1.49 million work permit holders nationwide. New policies capped low-wage hiring and raised wage thresholds for high-wage roles. The result was striking. New work permits issued between January and October 2025 dropped by almost 50% compared to 2024. The message was clear: quality and necessity over volume. Refugees and humanitarian commitments. Humanitarian immigration remained a priority, even as asylum claims declined. Protected person admissions were targeted at around 20,000. Alongside roughly 30,000 refugee resettlements. Claims fell sharply down over 30% year-over-year, especially after visa requirements were reinstated for Mexico. However, processing backlogs remained stubbornly high, with over 119,000 pending applications by mid-2025. Special initiatives for Ukraine and Hong Kong continued outside the main quotas. New pathways and pilot programs. 2025 also introduced innovation. New caregiver pilots opened direct PR routes for home care and childcare workers. The Rural Community Immigration Program replaced earlier pilots, expanding settlement beyond major cities. Sector-specific pilots, including construction and healthcare, signaled a sharper focus on economic gaps. Cost of living and economic reality. While inflation cooled to about 2.2%, everyday costs told a different story. Food and rent both rose nearly 4.7%. Keeping affordability under strain. Interest rates held steady at 2.25%, and housing prices softened slightly, especially in large cities. The government openly linked slower immigration growth to easing housing pressure, though relief will take time. Looking ahead, what 2026 will bring. For 2026, Canada plans to welcome about 380,000 permanent residents and 516,600 temporary residents. Immigration isn't stopping, it's becoming more selective. Healthcare workers, tradespeople, construction workers, and researchers will remain top priorities. Processing speed is also in focus, with a goal to finalize 80% of applications on time. As Canada steps into 2026, immigration remains a cornerstone of the economy, leaner, sharper, and far more intentional than before. What to expect from Canada's new immigration rules in 2026? Canada is entering a new immigration era. After years of record-breaking admissions and aggressive growth, the federal government is deliberately tapping the brakes. In 2026, Canada will welcome fewer permanent residents, international students, and temporary workers, marking one of the most significant recalibrations of its immigration system in decades. This strategic shift, first announced in late 2024 and reinforced again in November, is designed to address rising unemployment, soaring housing costs, and increasing pressure on public services such as healthcare, transit, and education. The message from Ottawa is clear: immigration will continue, but with sharper focus, tighter controls, and higher expectations. For anyone planning to study, work, or settle in Canada, 2026 will be less about volume and much more about value. A smaller, more selective intake of permanent residents. Canada's most recent immigration levels plan confirms that the country will continue reducing permanent resident admissions. In 2026, the target is set at 380,000 new permanent residents, down from 395,000 in 2025 and dramatically lower than the 483,000 admitted in 2024. This reduced intake is not temporary. The annual target of 380,000 will remain unchanged through 2028, signaling a long-term structural adjustment rather than a short-lived policy correction. Experts describe this as a necessary recalibration following rapid expansion between 2021 and 2024. The government's intention is to attract applicants with stronger education, deeper professional experience, and higher economic contribution potential. Permanent residents, non-citizens authorized to live and work in Canada long-term, remain a cornerstone of the immigration system. They pay taxes, access healthcare, and build lives in Canada, though they do not have voting rights. Pathways to permanent residence still include family sponsorship, refugee programs, and economic streams, but competition within each category is intensifying. Economic immigration takes center stage. While overall numbers decline, economic immigration remains Canada's top priority. In 2026, nearly 240,000 permanent resident spots will be reserved for skilled workers, with even higher targets planned for 2027 and 2028. These applicants are selected for their ability to strengthen Canada's economy and fill labor gaps. Evaluation factors include education, work experience, language proficiency, and adaptability. Through the Express Entry system, Canada will prioritize professionals in sectors critical to national needs. These include healthcare, social services, skilled trades, agriculture, education, and STEM field science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Candidates with experience in these areas will continue to enjoy a competitive edge. Temporary worker numbers cut back sharply. Canada is also moving aggressively to shrink its temporary resident population. The government aims to reduce temporary residents to less than 5% of the total population by the end of 2027. In practical terms, this means only 230,000 new temporary workers will be admitted in 2026, down sharply from 367,750 in 2025. The target will fall further to 220,000 in the following years. This marks a philosophical shift from growth-driven immigration to a sustainability-focused model. Previously, temporary labor inflows expanded with minimal oversight. Now, Ottawa is tightening employer rules, especially for low-wage positions, to better align hiring with genuine labor shortages. With more than 3 million non-permanent residents currently in Canada, the government is clearly signaling that unchecked temporary migration is no longer on the table. International student admissions slashed. Perhaps the most dramatic change affects international students. Canada will issue only 155,000 new study permits in 2026, with numbers dropping further to 150,000 in 2027 and 2028. This represents a stunning reduction from earlier caps of 360,000 in 2024 and 437,000 in 2025. For context, international student admissions peaked at over 650,000 in 2023. Alongside reduced quotas, financial requirements are becoming stricter. As of September 1, 2025, single applicants must prove access to $22,895 per year, an increase of more than $2,000. Applicants bringing family members must show approximately $6,000 more per additional person. The aim is to ensure students are financially self-sufficient and less reliant on strained housing and social systems. Canadian experience becomes the golden ticket. One of the clearest themes of the 2026 immigration plan is a strong preference for applicants who already have Canadian experience. To reduce pressure on services while still meeting labor needs, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada plans to fast-track up to 33,000 temporary workers into permanent residency over 2026 and 2027. Applicants with Canadian work experience, strong language skills, and proven adaptability will now stand out far more than overseas candidates without domestic exposure. In short, Canada is no longer expanding indiscriminately, it is refining its intake. Family reunification faces tighter limits. Family-based immigration is also being trimmed. In 2026, Canada will admit 84,000 immigrants through family reunification, down slightly from earlier plans. That figure will fall to 81,000 in both 2027 and 2028. Work permit eligibility for family members has also narrowed significantly. Open work permits are now limited to spouses of international students enrolled in doctoral programs, long master's programs, or select professional fields such as nursing, law, pharmacy, and engineering. Similarly, spouses of foreign workers must now be employed in management roles, degree-level professions, or designated shortage sectors. Workers must also have at least 16 months remaining on their permits. Dependent children of foreign workers are no longer eligible for work permits at all. Francophone immigration gains momentum. Even as overall numbers decline, Canada is expanding opportunities for French-speaking immigrants. In 2026, Francophone newcomers are expected to make up 9% of all permanent residents, up from 8.5% in 2025. This share will continue rising, reaching 10.5% by 2028. French proficiency is increasingly becoming a strategic advantage, particularly for applicants willing to settle outside Quebec. Refugee and asylum targets reduced. Canada is also scaling back humanitarian admissions. The 2026 target for refugees, protected persons, and humanitarian cases is 56,200, nearly 12,000 fewer than previously planned. That number will drop again in subsequent years. Proposed legislation under Bill C-2, the Strong Borders Act, could further tighten asylum rules. Claims may become ineligible if submitted more than 1 year after arrival in Canada or more than 14 days after crossing the U.S. land border. Authorities may also gain expanded powers to cancel immigration documents immediately. The bottom line for 2026. Canada is not closing its doors, but it is narrowing the gate. The future belongs to applicants who bring skills, language strength, Canadian experience, and adaptability. For those who plan strategically, 2026 still offers opportunity. But success will depend less on timing and far more on preparation, precision, and purpose. That is all for today, in this video. Please hit like and subscribe, and don't forget to push the notification bell for an upcoming video. See you later. Till then, take care.